It is never smooth sailing when you're trying to cross an ocean. We're currently stuck here in Walvis Bay in Namibia. We're trying to find a weather window to escape and sail out across the South Atlantic to St Helena Island, but we currently got over 30 knots here at anchor inshore, and it is a hell of a lot worse out to sea, and we do not want to be out there right now.
The trouble is that once these strong winds have blown through, the forecast is for zero wind along this section of coast. So we have to decide between too much wind and too little.
We've already been waiting here for a couple of weeks, and we don't want to wait here for another week and a half to see what might come after that big area of no wind. So what we're going to try and do is sneak out in the area of shifty, unstable wind between the strong winds and the no wind area. If we can get far enough north and offshore in the first 3 days, then we should be able to pop out into steady trade wind conditions for the rest of the 1,200-mile voyage to St Helena Island. But right now it is impossible for us to even get ashore to check out with Customs and Immigration and reprovision the boat. So we actually not only need a weather window to sail across the ocean, we also need a weather window just to get ashore, get some food and check out. We are Matt and Amy. We have spent the last 6 years sailing our 37-foot sailboat Florence around the world. In that time we have crossed 3 oceans. Over 36,000 miles have passed under our keel, and we are now closing in on our goal, to complete our circumnavigation.
Before us lies the Atlantic Ocean, which we will now cross twice in order to reach the shores of England once more.
To get from here in Namibia to the Caribbean means sailing across 5,600 miles of the South Atlantic Ocean. But in the middle of that ocean lies the island of St Helena. Its position on the trade wind route from Africa to the Caribbean means it has been an important rest and reprovisioning stop for sailing vessels since before the 1700s. It is like a motorway service station on the ocean, and along with using it as a rest stop, we hope to get ashore and explore this unique island.
We managed to find a small gap in the weather to make a quick trip ashore to check out and grab some fresh provisions. But the bad weather confined us to Florence at anchor for the next 2 days as we waited for the wind to subside.
We're about as ready as we're ever going to be to leave. The forecast is still not looking ideal, but we're both keen to go.
Yeah, the boat is completely covered in sand. It's ridiculous. And the boat is also getting thrown around. As you can see in the background, I think we're rolling. So this is not the most comfortable anchorage in the world.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those places where you think if we're moving around like this and we're not getting enough sleep, we may as well be doing that at sea.
Normally, most of the time we've been setting off to places we set off when it's calm, and today it's been really windy this morning. We were getting 30, 35 knot gusts this morning, so that's why the boat's getting thrown around from the leftover swell. So we're not both feeling as calm as we normally are. I'm feeling a bit nervous.
Yeah, this passage I don't think is notorious. It's certainly not one that we felt nervous in the lead up to, but just the conditions that we've had over the last couple of days and the forecast not being ideal means that I think we're both feeling a bit nervous. It's the longest passage we've had in a while as well.
For a long time, yeah. But a few butterflies in the stomach just means it's a proper adventure. If it didn't have any butterflies in the stomach, it wouldn't be a proper adventure.
The trouble is that we could stay here and no better window appear, and all the while the boat's just getting absolutely covered in the Namib desert.
Yeah.
We're both ready to go, so let's go.
So it's time to go. Right, let's go. Not so bad after all.
Ah, it's beautiful. Feels so good to be sailing again.
The motion through the waves is much better when we're actually sailing through them instead of anchored and rolling with them. So we got about, well actually that's a 27 knot gust, so it's still pretty windy, but we've got Florence reefed down, 2 reefs in the main, 2 reefs in the Genoa, so she can cope. Better than cope, she can do really well. little bit different to how it was when we started. Very little wind out here, just enough to keep us moving at 3 knots. Beautiful sunset. A nice gentle start. Hopefully we won't run out of wind and we can keep going through the night. Well, as you can see this morning, the wind has disappeared. In fact, we've been struggling to make even 2 knots for most of the night. We knew this was going to happen, and now we just got to hope that we can get through this really light patch to the trade winds that should be on the other side of it. So in about an hour's time, we'll get an update to the weather model so we can download the latest forecast and see what it says. I'm hoping it's going to show that even at less than 2 knots we can just plod along and wait for the wind to come to us. But if it looks like this wind hole is going to expand out from the coast, we may have to turn on the engine to get ahead of it and get into those trade winds before the wind hole expands and swallows us up. We knew it was going to be light winds when we set off. That was going to be the problem, trying to get through the light wind patch, and we prefer that to dealing with too much wind. It's much more comfortable in light winds, at least, even though we've been going slow. It's been really nice and comfortable on board. Beautiful sailing, beautiful night skies, and a really nice introduction to the passage. Once we get into the trade winds, it should be a bit more boisterous. Probably going to get some bigger waves from the side, which is going to throw us around a little bit. So it's sort of make the most of this light and gentle stuff rather than getting frustrated by it. But doing 2 knots does mean we're going to do 48 miles a day. It's like less than half walking pace. It's quite ridiculous, really. Later that day, the wind picked up a tiny bit, so we are gliding along beautifully over the calm sea.
It feels so good to be out here. The sailing conditions, we couldn't ask for better, really. It's just incredible. Nice, fairly flat seas, enough breeze to fill the sails and keep us moving. And we're just both feeling elated to be out here and to have an empty horizon and hundreds of miles ahead of us. It's just such a good place to be. It doesn't really matter how many times we've set out on a long passage or an ocean crossing, and we get caught up in that kind of pre-stress of leaving, and you're constantly thinking about what you could have forgotten, what could go wrong, have you picked the absolute best weather window, and it's not a really nice time, to be honest, when you're getting ready for an ocean passage. There's a lot of anxiety, and that doesn't really go away no matter how many crossings I think you've set out on, and then you just leave, and you leave all of that behind, and it feels so good to be out here. Before we started sailing around the world, I used to wonder what it would be like to lose sight of land, and to me that was previously kind of an anxiety-inducing moment, but now it's one of the things that I look forward to the most. It's one of my favourite bits of ocean sailing is getting to that point where we lose sight of land and there is nothing on the horizon. I love it.
Well, here we are out in the South Atlantic Ocean, and it's a beautiful day out here. sea state's pretty steady, despite it still making us roll around a bit because we're going almost dead downwind. But this is what we have to do when we're out at sea. We have to do this a couple of times a day. Is we get a wind shift and we have to change the sails. So we've been sailing along overnight and most this morning with the wind coming over this quarter of Florence. So that's catching it nicely with all the sails that we got set at the moment. But now we've had a wind shift and we need to now sail along with the wind coming over that quarter of Florence, which means we now need to change all of the sails over to the other side. And most of that one of us can do by ourselves, so we don't need to wake the other person up, but changing this pole over to the other side, especially when the boat's rolling, is much easier and safer to do with two people. So for that, I've woken Amy up from her mid-morning nap. And then this will take us about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour to change everything over. And then Amy can go back to bed again and I'll go back to keeping a lookout until it's time for my afternoon nap this afternoon. In the main, if I undo the preventer.
First, we release the preventer on the mainsail.
Then we pull the mainsail in hard so that we can keep it under control as we steer through the jibe.
Once we have jibed the mainsail, we swap the preventer onto the other side and attach it to the mainsail again.
The preventer prevents the mainsail from accidentally jibing across the boat and means it is much safer for us to move past it on deck.
That's the mainsail done, so now we can furl the genoa.
With the genoa furled, we can take the pole in.
Now the pole is out of the way, we can jibe the staysail. This is the simplest job. Just let one rope out and pull one in on the other side.
That's the staysail done, so back to the genoa.
We need to swap all of the ropes that were holding the pole across onto the new side.
Once we have swapped the ropes over, we can put the pole out on the new side.
Finally, we unfurl the genoa onto the pole and we are done. That is, until the wind shifts again, of course. Well, we have turned around and we are heading back towards Africa. It's not intentional, but the wind has completely died and we've been drifting, unfortunately drifting in the wrong direction. We're totally surrounded in fog. We have been for a lot of the night and it's very wet and as you can see, quite cold on deck. We could motor, and we'll probably have to for a couple of hours at least, just to charge the batteries because they're not going to get any solar power. We can only carry enough fuel to motor about 400 or 500 miles, but we've got 876 to go, and if we were to use all of that diesel up, we'd have to fill it up by jerry can in St Helena. It's quite a difficult process, and it costs £2.25 a litre.
So we're not doing that.
So I think we're going to drift for a little bit longer and wait for the wind.
Well, it looks like we've just escaped that fog bank. We were drifting around with all sails down for a couple of hours. We're in the fog bank for I think 4 hours since Amy swapped over watches with me this morning. And I thought it might take until late afternoon for us to get some wind, but it's lunchtime. And we've just popped out that fog bank into beautiful blue skies, flat water, 12 knots of breeze, and some awesome sailing. Now hopefully what should happen now, if this is the true breeze we're expecting, is it's currently coming from slightly in front of us. It should shift round to come more from the side and then more from behind, and then we'll pick up speed and be making really good progress towards St Helena, and hopefully this should be us in the wind for the rest of the way now. God, it's a lot warmer now we're not in the middle of the fog bank. Don't need like 4 layers on.
Having reached the steady trade winds, with Florence making good speed towards the island of St Helena, it was all going a little too smoothly.
Africa is 500 miles that way. The tiny island St Helena is 730 miles that way, and we've sprung a leak. It always happens in the middle of the ocean. Happened to us halfway across the Atlantic. We had 1,000 miles behind us and 1,000 miles to go, and we sprung a leak then. Now this time it's not crazy. We're only taking on somewhere between 0.5 and 1 litre per hour, so nothing that the bilge pump can't cope with, but not something that we can just ignore because it could get worse. So we've been through the sea cocks and everything in front of the boat. We can't really tell where it's coming from yet. We've discounted those; they're not leaking at all.
Discounted the water tanks.
I don't think it's the water tanks in the boat. It could be. I tasted it and it didn't seem really salty, but it didn't seem really fresh, so I couldn't really tell which it was. There are some jerry cans of water in here which could be leaking. That could be it. Or we've got a couple of other sea cocks in the lazarette here, which are for the cockpit drains. So now I've got to empty everything out of the lazarette and then everything down to the cockpit locker and just track down where it is. I mean, even if we can't fix it, we need to know where it's coming in from, so if it does suddenly get worse, we can make some decisions about what to do, because we are in the middle of the ocean. As far as the eye can see, you've got beautiful sea as far as the horizon. There is no one else out here. There are no ships. We're out of radio range of anyone, so we have to fix this.
Just because Matt said we're alone out here, we were then suddenly on a collision course with this ship. He's luckily changed course a little bit.
That'd be a good thing if we were sinking.
Yeah, we would have obviously been very happy to see them if we'd have been taking on more water than we are.
Yeah, there's water in the bottom here. Okay, well, looks like this might be the culprit. Aha! Oh, that's alright. I think I found the source of the leak. This pipe,
Oh!
yeah, exactly, it's supposed to be connected to the drain that goes around this hatch, and it's just not attached. There's quite a lot of water down below, and so what I think must have happened is it didn't matter when we were leaving Walvis Bay and it was all calm, and then as we've got into the trade winds overnight, we've been having a lot of water on deck because we've been charging along at 7 knots, heeling over and slopping around, and a lot of water's been going down the side of the deck and draining through this hatch, and obviously it's all being funneling straight into the lazarette. But because Florence doesn't have a clean run of bilge, there's lots of ribs. In here there's various compartments which are about yay high, which it's clearly been cascading down to, and I can tell that because the lower ones are more empty than the top ones, if you know what I mean. It's definitely started at the top and gone downhill. And then gradually it's overcome those ledges and gone into the bilge forward. And even though we've not got water on the deck at the moment, we're still gaining water in the bilge, because as we're rolling, it's just slopping about and eventually going over each rib. At least that's my theory. At least that's definitely one source of a leak. Okay, so this is the pipe that's come off, and this is the drain where it's supposed to go onto, that comes down from the surround around the cockpit. Now I guess I probably should have this bolted to the bulkhead somehow so it can't get knocked off. Well, you live and you learn, or at least you do if you don't sink. What you can't see is that as we're rolling back and forth, I'm having to hold on to just not get thrown about. It's a lot more difficult doing these sorts of things when you're at sea. I think what's happened is, as we've been rolling, something in Lazarette has just moved and hit this, and the hose clamp's not been tight enough and it's knocked off. But there's not space for 2 hose clamps on that. Everything that goes out the bottom of the boat, or is below the waterline, has double hose clamps on it. But that isn't. Well, that's not as bad as I feared. So I've got a big bailing out job to get all the little nooks and crannies in here, dry it all out, obviously fix that, and then bail the bilge out one more time, and then fingers crossed it'll stay dry. One of the things that we find difficult to share when we're sailing is the motion of the boat and the perspective of where we are at sea. And the best way to do that would be to fly our drone, but we've only got a little Mavic Air, and launching and recovering that at sea from a moving boat is really difficult, and obviously there's a high risk of us losing that drone over the side, and it's our only one. But since we left Cape Town, we've been using this, which is Insta 360-1X2 combined with a 3-meter long selfie stick. And we've been getting some really good results with this. It allows us to achieve drone-like shots without the risk of flying the drone. The software that comes with it automatically removes the pole from the shot. To be honest, before we got this, we were a bit sceptical about it. But now, after months of using it, we would not be without it. We can use it in any conditions without worrying, and we're constantly finding new angles to capture with it, both at sea and on land. Once we have shot the footage on the 360-degree camera, we take it off and we put it into the software that comes with the camera on the laptop. This allows us to transform it from a 360-degree view into a standard view that we can use in the videos that we make. We can choose where within 360 degrees we point the view that we want to see. We can zoom in and out, and we can also dynamically choose different angles at different times in the video clip, and the software will automatically smooth out the transitions between those angles for us. Once we have manipulated the view to get what we want, we export the video clip and load it into our regular video editing software, where we add it to the clips from our main camera, from our drone, from our GoPros, sound from our various microphones and voiceovers, to make the videos that you watch on YouTube. We hope you've enjoyed the new angles we've been able to get with this. Let us know what you think in the comments below the video, and if you want one of these for yourself, there is an affiliate link in the description below the video. Next time we encounter squally conditions as we sail Florence on westward across the South Atlantic Ocean, and we reach possibly the biggest milestone of our entire voyage so far. Cheers! Cheers! What awesome!
Don't forget to subscribe to catch the next episode. We release a video every 2 weeks.
If you'd like to find out more about behind the scenes on Florence, track our progress across the oceans in real time, find out where we are right now, or ask us pretty much anything, then please head over to our Patreon site and join the crew.
We'd like to thank everyone who supports us to make these videos possible. And a special thank you to our staff patrons.